Hi, Jean. Ah,
Hi.
hey,
Can you hear me, Allison?
I can. Yep,
Okay. I'm always shutting off the wrong button, so.
I know, right? I'm gonna try and put on some headphones and see if you guys can still hear me. I brought my computer from work so that I don't have technical issues. Because our computer is very old.
Did you go through this on the weekend with Connor?
We practiced at lunch today.
Oh, good.
Okay, can you still hear me?
I can.
But
And
I
can you
can't
hear?
hear you.
Oh, yeah, you have to change your audio setup.
Oh, maybe I'm not gonna worry about it then because I don't know how to do that.
Down at the bottom
Yeah.
of your bottom left where it says mute,
Mm-hmm.
if you click on that arrow, it'll give you a choice of things to select. And I think you want to hit one of the, well, I don't have mine plugged in. When I had my headset plugged in, the option came up to plug it, to use the headset. Is
Okay,
that-
can you hear me now?
Yep. Can you hear me? No?
Yeah, but I can't hear you,
Oh,
which is weird. Oh, well. Oh, maybe I can hear you guys now.
can you hear now?
Yeah, cool.
Okay, got it.
That's great. Okay. That way the rest of the family isn't having to listen to the whole meeting.
Jeopardy is on.
Okay.
Hi, Jean. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, Clay.
Hi, how's it going, Allison?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So we're waiting for Cyril and Rachel and Darrell. I know Connor. Oh, Sarah's on. Connor can't be on at the meeting, so,
He is gonna attempt to come in a little late.
okay. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes for Rachel and Darrell. Yeah, wait one more minute and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Rachel.
Hey, Rachel.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Rachel. So let's go ahead and get started. I think I have not heard from Narelle, so I don't know what her plans are. Connor, it sounds like we'll jump in late. I knew he wasn't going to be on at the beginning. So this is the regular meeting of the Parks and Trails Committee, November 17th, 6 o'clock via Zoom video conferencing. The members of the committee that are on are Allison, Carol, Clay, Sarah, Rachel, and myself. And let's see, Jessica, you have two Jessicas on?
I think there's just one. I apologize. I got dropped off. I'll just introduce myself really quick. I am on the Livingston Bike Club with Sarah, and she forwarded me some information or had me get in touch with you. Just private citizen living in Livingston. I'm really interested in parks and trails and wanted to get more involved. So I appreciate you guys letting me listen in on your meeting today.
Great. Yep. It's all public.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So let's see, any changes to the agenda? None? Okay, we'll go as written. First thing is the approval of the draft minutes for the October 27th meeting. Is there a motion on that?
I make a motion to approve the draft minutes.
Second from anybody?
I'll second.
Carol, that was you? Okay.
Yes.
Clay and then Carol. Any changes to the minutes, corrections?
No.
Okay.
No.
If not, all in favor?
I
Hi.
Aye.
Opposed, or changes? Okay, pass. I'll mark those as approved and get those to Faith to post. So the next thing is the recommendation to the City Commission on the Parks and Trails vacancy. You actually have 3 attachments. One is the draft recommendation, and I'll let Clay take over on this one. And then the 2 applications that we got for the vacancy for when Rachel term ends at the end of December. Clay, do you want to go forward with that?
Yeah, sure. So I was able to meet with Tim Stevens and Doug Melius. They were both, I think, great candidates for the board. I spoke for about 30 minutes with both candidates, asked them lots of questions in terms of, what their experience was, why they wanted to be on the board, and things like, what they'd like to accomplish on the board. And I felt that although both candidates were really great, Tim had a lot more background and interest in doing grant writing, raising funds, that kind of thing, whereas Doug was very specific that was something he was not interested in. I also felt that Tim had a very specific desire to see a couple of things happen, both short-term and long-term on his tenure on the board. Specifically, he wanted to, on short-term, Tim wanted to see a flashing crossing light at Park in Maine. Long-term, he wanted to see something similar to Mountains to Maine that they have in Bozeman, similar something like that here in Livingston. And he just seemed to have a lot more concrete goals that he wanted to accomplish. And so for those reasons, I felt like that between the 2 candidates that he would be my top choice. But I did ask Doug if for some reason he wasn't chosen for this round, if he'd be interested in future opportunities, and he said yes, for sure. Just keep him in mind.
Good. And just on that point, Clay, though these applications are kept on file for 6 months.
Okay.
So if something else comes up, this is on file, he would not have to reapply. So,
Okay.
comments from the committee?
Did we have 2 committee members conducting those interviews?
So it was going to be Carol and I, but Carol had some issues that had come up, so I ended up conducting them myself.
Jean, I know that it's been just our, I guess, regular process to have 2 members there? Is there an issue with having only one?
Not if, unless there's questions with what Clay has presented, the recommendation, or what you're seeing in the applications. I mean, it isn't ideal, but the challenges were up against an opening for January 1st. So this needs to go to the city commission right away, so they can
Okay.
move on it in December.
Thank you, Clay, for doing that.
Sure.
Any comments about the applications or the recommendation? If not, does someone want to make a motion on the recommendation? You have the draft language in front of you.
I'll make a motion for a recommendation for Tim Stevens to be appointed to Parks and Trails Committee. I think he'll be a great asset.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Carol.
Carol, okay. And I will tell you, I've known Tim Stevens for 30 years, so I am comfortable with that recommendation. I have not though met Doug, so I do know that it's looking at the positive from Tim's perspective, I think he'd be good. Any other comments? If not, are we ready to take a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And so the motion is unanimous. Any nays? Okay, so this language, exactly as you see it, is what I will forward to Faith tomorrow. And I guess I'll let you know when it's on the agenda for the city commission. So let's see. Sarah, you had brought up something about Myers Riverview Trail trees, and I didn't want to not see what you found out about that. Your question was about some of the markings on those trees along the trail. And my suggestion was you direct that to Mike Cardos. Did you get any answers on that?
I did. I didn't get answers to my questions. If there was an opportunity to kind of discuss tree priority, or if it was part of a grant or anything like that. I was told by Michael Cardos that it was normal parks and trees maintenance, and it had pertained to safety of pedestrians. Mars is the one who flagged, or not Mars, sorry, Montana Freshwater Partners now was the one who flagged it. They're doing a lot of work with landowners and agencies to protect, recruit large woody debris to keep them in the riparian corridors, just for ecosystem health. And so they're the ones that flagged it, and they wanted to ensure that these trees can remain intact, or if it was a done deal and wanting kind of just also a discussion to happen. And Michael told me to have Wendy reach out to him directly. And she reached out to Shannon and Dan, and Shannon provided a little bit more of an answer, in that, in fact, they were removed for safety concerns for trail users, but he agreed with the rationale on protecting large trees and riparian corridors. But if there is a liability, then of course they can't negate that tree removal. So they've left a numerous amount of dead trees within the Myers River Trail area. But if some of them were too close to the high use walking trail, then they've asked the contractor to remove just the large branches and then leave the trees on the ground. So that they're not removed. I don't think Montana Freshwater Partners, think this is an ideal situation, and I think they wanted a little bit more of a collaboration on decisions made around all trees, dead trees, live trees, etc. But it's just left up to the Parks Maintenance Department.
And Sarah, I guess their question was in regard to the woody debris falling into the water to help work with flow and fish spawning and those kinds of things, I would assume.
Yeah, and that's where it's out of my expertise is how, in fact, those dead trees do benefit.
Yeah, so there's a lot of work actually going on in Europe right now. Some of it had to do with the fact that the beaver was exterminated from much of its range in Europe, and so there was less woody debris in waterways, which caused more flooding, caused the water, basically less water infiltration, impacts on wildlife, those kinds of things. So now that these countries are going through this rewilding process, they're actually, dropping trees back into the water because it's been proven to be so successful in terms of keeping everything intact. So I assume one question I had was, is there a potential for some of those trees to have them cut and fall into the waterway in some cases, so that there's no risk of it harming a pedestrian, and of course that cuts out things like woodpeckers and other insectivores that might use those rotting wood, but at least it's better than having it carted away. And this may be beyond our scope, but just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I guess it's really informative, and I think as much as humans meddle in land management, we probably do 10 times as more harm. And so keeping all those species within that corridor, it is totally essential. And I don't know if there's an opportunity for Parks and Trails to provide a recommendation. It feels that it's also more tree board. The tree board didn't have any information about it. They just thought it was a grant and it was part of the normal tree removal. Safety is always a hurdle that it's hard to get around, but yeah, moving those trees into those areas might be something, but with lack of resources at parks or public works, there is some things to navigate. And if that's something we want to take on, or if we just want to support Montana Freshwater Partners or vice versa, I'm not sure. I think that's a question I wanted to bring to the committee. What is our role potentially, if there is one?
From my perspective, it seems like that Montana Freshwater should be the lead on that, but I'm happy to, they're the experts, but.
Well, it might be something to ask for more interaction with the tree board. They're a city board, and it would be good to see what they think about this. It isn't just about planting trees in the boulevards or parks and trails. Let's see what they think about it. Sarah, Rachel, go ahead.
How did this question or concern come about?
Direct contact. Someone just reached out and said, hey, do you know what's going on with the trees that are marked yellow? And we don't know. They could be.
And they reached out to Parks and Trails about that?
No, me as an individual.
Oh, okay.
Sarah, would you be willing to touch base with the tree board marshal or somebody and just ask them if this is something that we could get? I mean, do they think this is within their jurisdiction?
The tree board is, I think, feeling a little deflated on knowing what their jurisdiction is. But I would be happy to forward it to Marshall and a couple of people and see if they wanted to support Montana.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay. I did walk on the trail and see the ribbons, and it was discouraging because a lot of birds use those trees, right? There's 3 nest locations in one tree, and that's one of the ones marked for removal. So
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like, I get pedestrian safety and it's hard to get around that, but those trees don't stop being useful when they die. I mean, nurse logs, the trees fall and then they become fertilizer for the next generation of trees. So there's a whole cycle there that's being cut out if they're removed.
Sarah, is there anything else you could think of that we could ask either of the city or the tree board? Or are you comfortable with this process where someone brings it up and we find out from the city what's going on?
I don't get a feeling from the city that they want to have much of a discussion around it. And I don't know why. I would love, I think in an ideal situation, it'd be really lovely to have just a round robin around a table with different stakeholders to try to come up with maybe something that's a little bit better. And maybe we can save the city resources and time and money. And I mean, I feel like there's a solution in there.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I was just thinking as you're talking about this, and I've talked to you and Jean about pesticide stuff before, but I mean, this seems like a situation where, and I know that's a county issue, but it's like things are being done for public safety, but is it more of a to cover liabilities, or is it more for like what are the risks and what are the rewards, and like is the community on board with doing the right thing if there's not tons of risk? And I don't know, that's a long way to say I like the idea of having a sort of a discussion about it.
A discussion about what in particular?
Just discussing things like this for our town as we move forward, like, what are the risks for leaving the trees up? Well, yes, a tree or branch could harm somebody, but is there a way to sort of find out at least a happy medium for situations like this that benefit the ecological community as well as bird watchers and all the in streams and the health of the streams and the species that live there and all those other kinds of things.
And Clay, when you say you like the idea of having a discussion about this, a broader one, who are you thinking about bringing into this?
Well, just like Sarah was saying,
city,
like
tree board, the public?
Tree board, maybe concerned members of the public, maybe, fisher people, just, like whoever is interested in this. And maybe this is getting too blown up, but I do think this kind of thing is important for us to talk about in our community versus just doing the status quo of removing a tree.
I don't know if you guys want any words from the peanut gallery here, but I work for the Forest Service and I work on wildland fire, and a lot of what we end up
Jessica, can you identify yourself and where you live, just so for the record?
Absolutely. My name's Jessica Hawes. I live in Livingston, Montana. I work for the U.S. Forest Service, and we deal with hazardous tree removal quite often. And these are the trade-offs that we're always talking about: the human safety versus ecological integrity of trees. And there are ways to determine how dangerous trees are if they're fully dead and, a full standing snag. There may be somebody at the local Forest Service office that could help with assessing some of that if folks wanted to reach out. I work for the Forest Service at the national level, so my contacts are limited in the Livingston office, but I do have a few. So if that's something that may be of use for you, just let me know. But that is something that they deal with quite often. They may be able to provide some guidance. But I do hear you. A lot of times safety will trump a lot of it. It's the easy way out.
Thanks, Jessica.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Sarah, could you start this at least by just checking with the tree board?
Yeah, I'll check with the tree board. And yeah, I think it, wraps up into the conversation with the removal of the trees, with the emerald ash borer, what they did with that grant before emerald ash borer is even here. We've just, or it may not even come. We don't know. We decide to just remove things before they're a problem. So I'll reach out to the tree board and see if they want to participate. Is there anything else I can do? Because that'll take 5 minutes. Is there?
I think the main thing is to find out jurisdictions, right? And then what could we do? Could we do what Clay is asking, which is to have a meeting with city staff, us, maybe the tree board, members of the public, to talk about trees more so, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Does that make sense, Clay?
Yeah, I think that sounds really good.
Anything else from folks? Members of
I have a comment. I was just, as I was listening to this, I just think it would be maybe helpful to acknowledge that this issue, to me, appears to be, another example of a systemic problem where there's lack of communication between the various arms and branches of the city government. And without adding work to anyone's plates, I mean, it would be very helpful for us as a group to understand, how the city comes to these kinds of decisions, so that we can prepare to communicate with the public. I'm not sure what would have been or what is expected. For instance, when the member of the public reaches out to us as community members or as committee members, did Sarah do the right thing according to the city administration? I'm not sure. That's still unclear to me. I think she did. She clearly looked for some information, but is this the kind of situation where we're supposed to be forwarding these concerns to the city staff to deal with?
Manager.
City
Well, yeah, and I
manager,
think
right?
that's why she did it the way she did. My suggestion when she approached me was to contact Mike Cardos.
Yeah. So, in the health and wellness realm in the community right now, there's at least a couple of groups. One of them's Live Well 49. Another one is, I don't know, something I can't remember, but they basically serve as monthly gatherings where everyone can share projects, and it's a lot of sharing out. It's kind of like a live bulletin board in a lot of ways, but the added value to having a sort of service like that or place to share like that is that everyone knows or has an opportunity to know what others are up to. And I was just wondering if that is a model that could be retrofitted for the city government, maybe getting all the boards together, or at least the board chairs all together, so everyone can touch base on various projects or issues on a regular or semi-regular basis. Just thoughts.
Thanks, Rachel. Other comments? So we have a little bit of a path forward till we figure out next steps, is that right? Okay. Anything else on this? And I hear you, Rachel, on the communication. Really, I think a lot of us would like to improve that, so with city staff on this. Okay, we'll move on to the next one though, then Clay on the NOMO May report.
Yeah, sure. And do you want me to share my screen? Would that be helpful to just go into the document?
Sure, that was a great document, Clay. I really appreciate you doing all the work and the beautiful.
Yeah,
photos.
no problem. And I should acknowledge that I got some excellent comments from Sarah, which I need to add into a future edition of the report. So thanks so much for the feedback. So Jean, I can't share my screen. It's been disabled. I don't know if you can.
Allison can.
Oh, okay.
I can pull up the document,
Okay, sure, sure.
because I'm not quite sure how to allow you to share yours.
Okay, no worries. And
Okay. So does that work?
yeah, but can you just, well, that's fine. Yeah.
I'm gonna open it up for us.
Yeah.
How's that look? This
That look-
document is beautiful, by the way.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's a Livingston bee right there on the cover. For my garden this summer. Okay, so as you guys know, and I've certainly talked about this enough, that I was so excited that we were able to host this first NOMA May this past May. And when, for many reasons, one reason I think is that it establishes Livingston as being a leader in this area in terms of pollinator protection. And, certainly it was fortuitous in terms of, it seemed like a great opportunity to get the community involved, as well as, it saved the community some money, the city some money in terms of, labor. There was certainly a lack of seasonal labor early in the season, so that also helped out the city. But I think what I was most excited about, and you can just scroll on up, I'm not going to read this word for word, is that, this is anecdotal, but there was so much conversation in the city in terms of people talking about it. Even my wife said, I was at the coffee shop downtown and these people were talking about it. And somebody was saying, I wish we could do that in Bozeman. It just seemed like there was a lot of comments, and certainly on This Is Really Livingston, there was a lot of commentary. Most of it, I think, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most of it was positive. There were some funny comments and there were some snarky comments, but in general, it seemed like that people were pretty much on board with it, in part because it was voluntary, which I think is really an important part of it. But we had 48 signs printed, 15 of those signs were used within the city in designated locations, and then the rest were given out to the public. And we had no problem getting people to take up those signs and put them in their yards. We also had 2 banners, one at the library and the other on the corner just near Mark's In and Out. And I just really appreciated the fact that the city was on board with allowing us to have that visibility in the project. In terms of some of the things, I think lessons learned, I think, I feel like there could have been even more information presented to the city early on to get to the community, get the community more aware of what we were doing. Certainly in the future, it'd be nice to have options for more signs, whether that be people print their own, as we did offer that for the community, or having an option to do print on demand at like NC Prints or something like that if people want to create their own signs. Downside too is that unfortunately this was a really weird season in terms of there was like a cold snap and then it got really warm. And so because of the weather, the bees were just not flying very much that time of year, as opposed to the other years that I've been in Montana. And I'm actually quite concerned about it, but I'm hoping that it was just a weather related issue. So we had planned on doing like a bio blitz, a citizen science event, but the weather was just not cooperating and we would have been just cold and miserable and not found any bees. But if we're able to do this in the future, that's something that I would definitely really like to do. And I'm really hopeful that in the future that the city next year, I don't know if anyone's heard anything, but I would love to try to continue this and maybe even expand it next year if the city's on board. In terms of feedback, we also had, or publicity, we also had an article in the Enterprise, and then it was featured, I shared it on social media, and a lot of my colleagues around the country have shared it, as well as it was shared by an organization that I'm part of called the International League of Conservation Photographers based out of Washington, DC, that was shared in their newsletter, which goes out to thousands of people around the country, as well as sharing it with Xerces, Society for Invertebrate Conservation, and many other organizations. So long story short, I feel like this little pilot was successful from my perspective. And mainly I was just excited to see the signs around town and to hear people talking about bees. And, even my neighbors, some of which, are more into lawn care than others, were great sports and participated and didn't mow even though it was killing them inside. And so I really appreciated that spirit. And the final thing I'll say, you can stop there, Allison, is this is a species of bumblebee that's really, really rare. It used to be one of the most common bees in the Western United States, the Western bumblebee, Bombus occidentalis. And there's a good chance that this species will be listed on the endangered species list in the near future. So as Livingston does more things to help protect pollinators, and we established a track record, including I would like to look at the city becoming what's called a Bee City USA, which is a designation for cities that do things for pollinators. I could see there being opportunities for the city to get grant funding to do more of this kind of work, especially showing that we have a track record for protecting pollinators. So anyway, I just think this puts us on a good footing for increasing awareness and raising funds for our city for this kind of work.
Clay, could you, two things, could you speak to, were there significant changes in the document that you want to make, like what Sarah had suggested? And then the one suggestion I had was, we got calls, both Clay and I, from Wisconsin, a town in Wisconsin that wanted to use the sign as a template for their own community. So I approached the city about that after talking with Clay, and they said it's fine with them. So
Okay.
I did get back to them, and I haven't heard what they're doing. Of course, we're going into winter, but it would be nice to see this got picked up in Wisconsin. And then were there other changes you wanted to make to the document? Because what I could do with this is, when we get down to it later in the agenda, I have to give a report to the city commission, our annual report. This would be an addendum to it.
Yeah. Well, so two of the items that Sarah mentioned that I didn't capture in here was, one, the fact that it did end up saving Shannon some money and the city some money in terms of with him not having seasonal workers. That was also important. And the other thing was just giving a nod to this idea that, and Sarah, there's certainly probably more in your document, but just off the top of my head, just giving a nod to the idea that this is one of the steps forward towards potentially helping Livingston become a BCD USA, which is something that I'd like to press forward for, but I don't know if it's useful for this document or not, but I was going to include that as well.
Okay.
Hey, what do you see forward as the next steps?
Well, I think I would like to get a commitment from the city that, like, this is something we're going to start doing, like, so that it's not so last minute. I mean, obviously it was last minute in a big way because I just came on the board in, I think, April, but it would be good to know now if they want to commit to that next year, so that if we need to fundraise for additional signage or figure out how to deal with that through the city, that would be important for me. And just sort of work out, do we want to do more stuff on the north side, or, those kinds of things, just to get more of the community involved, rather than waiting till the last minute.
The communication and the educational pieces could
Yeah.
be happening right now. It's planning season, right?
Yeah, and in addition, we were talking about, trying to do some of the stuff at the schools as well. So whether that will become a reality anytime soon, I don't know, but that would be really cool.
I think I have a lead for you on that front.
Cool.
It's
So
me.
Clay, there's a couple options too on this. One is, we obviously can include this in our committee priorities that we need to be developing. The challenge is, if you want to be doing some of that now, that might be a little bit later than you want. So I'm wondering if you, one thing we could do is simply approach the city right now and ask if we could expect this to go forward in 2022 with funding for signs. And I don't know if there's what other stuff you want, but.
For right now, I think just kind of building on what we've started to develop with maybe, I did a presentation for the Park County PCEC. And so, like, it'd be nice to try to figure out how we could have more community related, whether I do a couple more presentations or something like that, to get more of the community involved earlier as spring approaches. Those kinds of things would be nice to figure out what platforms or venues that would happen. But I think in general, I just want to keep building on what we've done for now, so that, sort of scaling what we've done at this point.
So would the request be for 500?
I think more. I think we want to build, and there was a over request for signs. So I'd ask for $1,000.
That's what that's kind of what I was thinking.
Can you, do you want to write something up, Clay, that would support the $1,000?
Yeah, I will.
And then what we can do is both send it to the city manager. We can also include it in our priorities. But we can acknowledge that the reason we're separating this out right now is timing. So
Okay.
that- Because if we're going to do it, there's an educational promote component that you want to engage in.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that regard, I could mention some of these other things in the proposal letter that I want to do, like, and give a nod to the fact that it did save the community money as well. That's
Okay. Anything else from folks? Great job, Clay. This was just amazing to have done, oh, just a minute, Rachel, to have done so much on such short notice. I mean, you jump on the committee and a few weeks later, we're running with this after a special meeting, the beginning of April. So good job.
I'm so glad it worked out.
Yeah, Rachel?
I had one more comment or question. Clay, would it be helpful for the committee to brainstorm potential partners that could highlight Nomo May on their properties in the upcoming year? Maybe like high visibility or entities of some sort, maybe beyond just homeowners, but businesses or public institutions, or would that be helpful for you to have like a short list?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. And I also think, one thing, like I talked to, oh shoot, I can't think of her name right now. Heather. I talked to Heather over at the landscaping. Heather Muldoon. I spoke with her about maybe doing some presentations, but that just sort of made me think like it'd be cool if, like, I don't know, Paradise Permaculture or some other local gardening groups would be interested in trying to like help support this too. Whether it be like a presentation at their gardens or a garden tour where I could speak on native bees or something like that, sort of potentially as a fundraiser as well to help raise money for this. I'm open to ideas.
If you'll build that into your outline of your request, Clay, too.
Yep,
That
I will do.
your hope is to do this outreach to especially some partners who might be able to really spread the word. I
will. And then Jean, when do you, I know as soon as possible, but do you have a deadline? Deadlines are helpful.
No, it's just whenever you get it to me, I'll forward it to the city manager.
Okay.
I have to get my report in with your revised summary here by the end of December.
Okay.
There's plenty of time there.
Okay, perfect.
But that's just for your report. It's not for the commitment to let us go forward with this.
Okay. Well, I'll just shoot for first week of December or something like that, if that works for you, for both.
Okay, great. Anything else? Yep.
Yeah, just one more comment. I don't know if you said it, I got dropped. The county picked this up and they promoted it on their website.
Oh, cool.
I sent you the link and it just says, it's a very nice idea to help bees and native pollinators, watch out for weeds and white top. So it's kind of in the weed control district news.
Oh, that's really cool. Did you email that to me, or could you put it in the chat?
I did. I emailed it a long time ago in June. I'll forward it again.
Thanks. I definitely got lost in the deluge, or I forgot about it, which is very possible.
Clay had other things on his mind in June.
I know. Sorry, I sent it again, but I thought that was nice of them, and they might be a worthy partner.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. It made it beyond the town.
Okay.
Clay, another suggestion might be to reach out to the Ag Extension Group.
Oh, cool.
They have a Master Gardeners program that has two of their instructors are from Livingston, and they're pretty active. And the Master Gardeners have to have a certain amount of volunteer hours that they put in every year in order to keep their master gardening qualification.
Oh.
And I know that they've asked people to help out with a pollinator garden that's over in Bozeman. So there may be an opportunity for local master gardeners. I'm one of those people to help out and get volunteers that way.
That's an awesome idea. Thank you.
So just for the record, that was Jessica. So That will go under
Yeah.
public comment there.
Private citizen.
Thanks, Jessica. That's good.
Okay. So the next one is the process for developing the Parks and Trails Committee priorities. I'm just wanting to ask what process you might want to use for doing this. The City Commission has started their discussion of the strategic plan priorities, and they had one meeting already on Monday. Their second one, they didn't get very far. They were still on goal and whatever. Their second session is November 30th at 5:30. So that's just setting some framework, some ideas for what their priorities are, if there's any changes to the strategic plan. Do you have ideas for how you want to do this? We could meet in January and have this be a major topic of discussion. This year, we had the city manager, Mike Cardos, come in February and talk to us about some of the Parks and Trails priorities. We could ask for that again if that's the way you want to go. So I just want to throw it open. It's not to discuss priorities, but what's the process you want to use for that?
I would like to support Michael Cardos and even Shannon to talk about what their priorities and, anticipated budget. I think that is the horse before the cart way to do it.
Okay. Okay. Other comments? Rachel says thumbs up. Anybody else? Clay says thumbs up. Okay, why don't I make that approach and see what we can find out? Because it is helpful to know what the city's priorities are. Okay. Let's see, updates. Reservoir Park recommendation, my apologies for that not having been actually attached to the agenda. Sarah, thank you for reminding me. I count the attachments. I always forget the agenda is an extra one. So it's basically what the document didn't change very much. We moved the priorities up, and then the front page is simply the email that went to the City Commission with the other thing attached. So that's where we're at. I have not heard that. I haven't seen the agenda for 2 weeks from now for the City Commission meeting. They just met yesterday, so their next meeting will be early December. I don't know if this will be on yet or not. I will let you know. Any comments, questions? Okay. The logo design. I just received this afternoon an email from Megan with the latest design. Because it just came today, it's not noticed. We can't take any action on it, but it does sort of suggest we might want to meet in December for at least this topic. Unless, if we don't, we'd have to wait till January and either have a second meeting in January or wait till our regular meeting at the end of January, which means we're waiting 2 months. What would you like to do?
I'm fine to meet on it if we want to, but because I'll be around, but
Me too.
Meet when?
December.
December, sorry.
Okay.
Because it wouldn't take all that long if that's the, I mean.
So Allison or Rachel or Carol?
I'm open to whatever the rest of the committee wants to do.
Okay.
I'm gonna be out of state, but we'll have access to internet, so I can meet depending on the day.
Okay. Carol,
Yes.
do you have a preference for meeting on the logo decision in December, or deferring?
And it wouldn't make any difference with me, just
Okay,
whatever the group
okay.
works.
So maybe the second week of December or something. I hate to get too close to when everything's getting busy, but why don't I send dates around? And we'll just go from there. Does it still work best to do an evening thing? Either 5:30 or 6?
You know,
Okay.
honestly, I'd rather do it as earlier if possible.
Yeah. Earlier is better for me.
Well, Allison, what's your schedule? Are you available at 5 or no?
No, I get off, I finish with patients at 5:15 and I can just stay at work and meet with you guys right at 5:15.
Clay and Sarah, does that help? Okay, Rachel? Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay. I'll send out some dates to just meet. Like Clay said, I don't think this takes a while. I just would prefer not to delay this 2 months.
Yeah, the other option for me is I get off work at 3:30 on Tuesdays. So if people wanted to meet on a Tuesday,
Okay,
That would be great.
Clay and Sarah, Carol, does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah, that works fine.
Yep.
Okay, I'll send those. Can I do a doodle poll and people just fill that out?
That sounds great.
Sure.
Okay, that's the easiest way to do it. Okay, sounds good. Trails and active transportation plan, it's still in progress. I heard from Don today. It's nothing really new to update. Sarah, anything from you?
Final chapters, we're gonna get a draft this week.
Okay.
Good.
Let's see, the city commission did have their discussion of the communications policy last night. It was delayed from 2 previous meetings. I wasn't able to be on and I've only listened to probably half or so of the discussion. Sarah or anybody else, was anybody else on?
I was on and I spoke.
Okay, can you, Allison and Sarah, speak to this? What came out of it? I mean, I guess.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought the discussion was excellent. Darrell really was a wonderful advocate for promoting a positive, inclusive policy, and positive, inclusive language when making policy. They talked a lot about how there is a need for training, there's a need for improved communication, there's a need for updating and making sure that everyone is on the same page with how we approach things. And I thought Melissa Newts made a really great comment that that the commission was made aware that it would felt a little bit out of left field, but it had been talked about for a while. And the city commission has been talking about needing to do further training for all of the boards. So there was no vote last night, and Sarah, you can add anything, but they decided to move forward with making some adjustments to the document, making it more of a positive communication system. Michael DeCellis and I were the only 2 that spoke, but a couple of the other members of other boards were there as well, like Lauren Dozell and Melissa Newton said that she had met with a couple people and Michael Cardos had already met with a couple chairs one-on-one related to the policy, and he would like to meet with all of the chairs of all of the boards eventually related to the policy. So overall, I thought it was a really productive conversation. I thought that the city commission was very thoughtful and wanted to make sure that it was clear that the boards were being supported, and in the long run, it was supposed to be beneficial and to make things more clear on our end on what our responsibility was, but there still needs to be work done on the document. Do you feel like that explains it, Sarah?
Yeah, that's a really good summary. I think You know, it's how do you, it was a really long conversation, which was great. And the conflict between bylaws and the value add that we have with the commission and the memo are in direct competition with one another.
Yeah, great
And,
point.
and it's really confusing, as we kind of pointed out. And the point was also made that, you know, we're volunteers and we have this really positive culture of people wanting to make a difference within their boards. And this doesn't provide a supporting mechanism. It provides a constricting mechanism that's confusing and that doesn't support the culture that has existed in Livingston and between boards and commission for so long. Cardo said that he developed the document in conjunction with boards, is what I heard. I don't know who those boards are. He said he had sat with chairs and they liked the document. So that was a bit confusing because I didn't know any board that had a positive response. To the memo.
Sorry, I took that differently than you, Sarah. I thought he had met with chairs since he made the document and had one-on-one conversations with them on the goal of the document and the purpose of the document, and that conversation was positive. So I think you're right in the fact that there has been some pushback, and the commission has heard that pushback. But I think after Cardos met with those chairs, he perceived those meetings as being positive, was my take on that.
It's just uncertain who those chairs are.
Well, and I met with them right before our meeting in August, but remember the document, the document wasn't presented till the end of August. So there was no preview of actual language in a communications process. What it was an explanation that he wants to clarify how we work with the city commission, which is fine. It was not the document itself, so. Unless something else happened that I'm not aware of.
Don't know. It was very vague. And so that also made the discussion very difficult, you know, because it was everyone talking about everything from a 500-foot level rather than being quite specific. Cardos also explained that the document was made in order to protect boards from the public, which was a bit confusing to me because then I would feel that we'd be more integral in that process of what we're being, of why we want to be protected or how we want to be protected, or so yeah, that point of like it did come out of left field as this thing that's like happening to the boards and not with the boards. And I like Darrell's comment that she says instead of discouraged communication, there should have been encouraged communication, right? Like a positive environment rather than what you shouldn't do, what you should do and what would be really helpful. So that's what I.
And it seems that the issue of bylaws and how that goes hand in hand with this policy is really a question. There's a conflict there that I don't think's been addressed.
That specifically was brought up, and Darrell actually quoted our bylaws and how they directly, or they don't work well with the new communication policy, for lack of a better term. And Melissa recommended that we probably need to, or the city commission needs to look back on their board handbook specifically, since our bylaws were approved by them and since there is a conflict with those documents.
I really like our bylaws and all the work that we did going into it. And I think this is going to be an interesting discussion from here on about how we make these agree and how we work with the city commission, because we're pretty clear in our bylaws about communicating with the public or communicating with the Park County and other entities, and policies like abandonments. So I'll look forward to this.
There was also a liability thing, discussion that's worth listening to, because we are not covered by
Right.
insurance. And so part of me feels that this document might be a way to protect the city if board members do anything or say anything.
Yep, yeah, I got some of that in what I heard, so, okay. So Allison and Sarah in particular, do you feel like this is a good first step and more is to come?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
There also was a goal of more training, more regular training for all board members. And the first training will be January 12th.
I think that's a mistake, actually.
What?
He said it's the 12th. It was originally the 12th. The new commissioners couldn't make it on the 12th. So I thought it got moved to the 16th, but that wasn't public record yet. So that's a
Okay,
inside information.
okay. So we
And
will follow
they
up on
still-
that.
But they still have to speak to Dan Clark. It wasn't certain. So that was a bit, it was like, yeah, there's training, but there's not training. We need to figure out training. There's
Mhm.
training this day, but we need to figure it out. And we don't know if we can do it remote with Zoom
Mhm.
and et cetera. So there's a lot of details to work out there.
I wonder if it would be worthwhile, since we have to meet in December, to just take 5 minutes, if you think about it beforehand, to ask what you want to see out of a training as members of the board.
Yeah. That's a great idea, Jane.
So could we do that? Just take just a few minutes at our December meeting just to say, here's the list of what people want to see, compile a list of this is what people want to see at a training, and we can send that to the city?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm so confused. At the end of the day.
Carol, does that work for you too?
Yeah, yes, I can make it work.
Okay. Rachel, I know you'll be off the board, but I mean,
Your input on what good training would be helpful.
You bet.
okay, pass it along. Because we'll.
I
look
have
at-
one more question about this. Can you remind me, does the communications policy require a commission vote? Or is it just an operational process that the staff can create policies for boards?
Allison, what's your read? I mean, when I had to jump off, there was a discussion about who boards really are supposed to be replying to, whether we're supposed to respond to the commission or what the role of the city manager is with the boards, given that we respond to the commission. Was there any discussion of that?
Yeah, so Sarah, correct me if I'm misremembering this, but from what they talked about, Darrell and Melissa made some recommendations, but right now the document is recommending that the boards only communicate with the public at scheduled board meetings, and those meetings must include an agenda and minutes, as well as being recorded so that there's public record and documentation of the minutes. And then if there is a project that has to be approved, we would go to the city commission for a vote. It was interesting because there wasn't a lot of talk about where the communication with Michael Cardos is, but there was discouragement of boards going directly to city employees for communication so that everyone is on the same page.
Good.
So is
And-
this going to a vote though? Back to Rachel's question, or?
The policy, there's quite a few changes that are going to be made, and they're going to discuss it again. And depending on what happens, then they'll make a vote. But at the moment, they are not voting on the way the policy is written.
So it's in draft form, but it will require a commission approval in order to be
Correct.
in use. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
And what did they say again about things like farmers markets, on-site visits? My impression was my impression was we can't do it, but if we notice it and we have an agenda, we can.
Right.
And because so that it's transparent. But then Melissa made the comment, she goes, look at our minutes, though. You can't capture what is discussed in a meeting.
Right. And
in a
I
committee
think,
meeting. So how do you capture what, even if that is the process you're taking, like what is the value that that's actually providing was the question.
yeah, I know. I think the big goal of that comment was to make it clear that when we meet with the public, we have to notice it in the newspaper and make it apparent that we're meeting. We have to have a written agenda. We have to have some way of recording it so it's public record. So it was mentioned that having a regular board meeting and the public coming to the board meetings is easier to complete those tasks versus meeting in public spaces like the farmers market, where you can be having a meeting, having an agenda, and then conversations just wander to other topics, and we may not have a good recording of what those topics are. He also talked about, or the city commission and Mike Cardos brought up, if we have a conversation with one individual in the grocery store, we don't have to have that written down, but it is important that we bring it back to the Parks and Trails Committee and say, hey, this was brought up, and we encourage that person from the public to come to our board meeting. That's how I took it, Sarah. But again, I think there's a lot of confusion in that. And I think that Jarrell and Melissa did a really great job of bringing those concerns up and reiterating them, and also bringing up the legal concerns with Courtney quite often and asking for her input, which I really appreciated. And so there were quite a few recommendations on improvement of language and rewriting the document.
Anything else from the committee?
Who's going to take the lead on redrafting it?
I don't think anyone specifically said, but from the way the conversation was, it did sound like Courtney and Michael Cardos.
Jessica, did you have any comments on this? I just want to make sure you have a chance to speak if you want to.
Hi, thanks again. Yeah, I appreciate being able to come to these meetings, but I guess I can see both sides to it. It is hard to know when some of these committees are meeting and what they'll be meeting about. So making that information easier to get, I think would be a good thing for the private concerned citizens.
Great, good point. Okay, so we'll wait and see when this is up again. And thank you both for being there for that. So we've already got to the decision on the December meeting. I'll send out a doodle poll. We'll probably try to do it within the first couple weeks to talk about the logo and just a few minutes on what we'd like to see from a training. Let's see, new officers selection in January. That's just going to be decided in January. Anything on social media that we need to do? Okay. Jessica, any comments on anything we did not have on the agenda?
The one thing, I think this has been resolved, and I know you guys discussed it at last month's meeting, but I wasn't around for that, was just the Bitterroot Trail concerns about the impacts from that house that's being developed there, or the high density housing that's being developed there. Just wondering how citizens can be actively reassured that that portion of the trail will be put back to where it was, and how do we keep on top of that? Do you have any recommendations for us that we can, should we be just writing letters, making sure that we're checking in? Are there timelines? Any further information on the Bitterroot Trail?
You can always go directly to the city manager, which is what we pretty much have to do as well. We can put this on a future agenda. We can include this in our discussion that we're going to request to have with both the city manager and Shannon Holmes in January or February, I guess it is. So, Sarah, did you have any thoughts on how we address this otherwise? The way we had to address it when it came up to us was to go right to the city manager.
That would be,
Okay.
yeah, that's the protocol, and Shannon might have more information and he's keeping an eye on it, but
Yeah. Okay. We'll keep that on our radar, Jessica.
Okay. And anything that I can do, or if you know of anything that other private citizens can do outside of contacting the city manager, just let me know. I know there's I live in that neighborhood, and there's quite a few people that use that trail that were really concerned and really upset when we saw it happening. So that was one of my instigators to start bugging Sarah how I can get more active and see if we can stop that stuff from happening before it happens, or at least make people aware that it's going to happen for a while. I think it would be less of a shock factor if there was some information of like, hey guys, this is going to happen, but we're aware of it. It kind of felt a little bit like nobody knew that it was even going to happen. And then all of a sudden they were out there with heavy equipment, and everybody's walks were disrupted. So yeah, I think just some advance notice and seeing how the city can help or handle that maybe a little differently in the future. So I'll reach out to the city manager again as well. Thanks.
Okay. Great. Committee member comments? Anybody? I did hear from the person, and Sarah, maybe you can refresh my memory on her name, but she lives across from Mayor's Landing where that easement.
Ann Fuller.
Yeah, Ann Fuller. She had concerns about the proposal by this county to extend a bridge from Mayor's Landing to the easement that the city owns, which goes right along her property to O Street. I advised her that it's not on our agenda. We don't even have a decision-making role right now. We could put it on the agenda if she wanted, but that in the meantime, she should approach the city manager. So that's where I left it. In the spirit of people who contacted us. So anything else from folks?
In general,
Yeah, any comments?
I met Matthew Maynard asked Clay and I to attend a site visit. Well, we met with Matthew and then we attended a site visit with Martin from HRDC to walk out the trail easement. And potential, there were some questions on some access on the east side.
Is this you're talking about HRDC Gully?
Yes, I should have
Okay.
probably
Okay.
made it an agenda item. On the west side, because they have a plot that's dedicated parkland, and that's before you get to the street right of way, it's kind of a no-brainer to have the access that's in that part. And then also the topography is very amenable. HRDC is eventually going to develop that property, but it's not in the near future. And they would expand that road, so trail can't come into conflict there. On the east side, Matthew thought that the topography was impossible, but when we got on the ground, you can see how there's actually a 12% slope, and there's something that's very possible down on that side. So yeah, we just ironed out a lot of, what future plans HRDC had, and drainage and locations for a trail, and not to impede on folks' backyard. And Matthew's also going to contact Jay Pocock, who is the developer that adjoins on that east side, like kind of the northeast side of the gully, because that's the continuation of the gully and maybe the most interesting part of the gully, the steepest part. And it abuts to that water tower road. He also wasn't sure if that water tower road is a legal public access. But in the meantime, it'll probably just be one trail. And, you know, the nuances of why you make a trail easement wider or narrower, you know, are kind of important. They're never going to develop that side of the hill. So if people step off it, they'll be legally trespassing, but HRDC is not going to sue anybody for stepping off the trail. So it's more than likely it'll be kind of down the gut of the gully unless he can figure out some other ways that won't require a survey. So our recommendation was fantastic, very complicated, but it would require, you know, in theory, it was really good and it was in line with HRDC's values, but it would require a survey and that could be expensive. And so they're going to try to avoid that. And so he'll come back to us with kind of options and what will work.
Did you say it was you and Connor or you and Clay?
Sorry, Connor, but
Okay.
Connor wasn't there. He couldn't
Okay.
make, so it was just
Okay.
my
I was
sole-
just staying quiet for credit. but-
Sorry.
Okay, so
Myself,
this was response to the letter we sent Shannon and Matthew
that's
about
right.
the HRDC gully easement with the maps, et cetera. They're following up with that because they're the ones who have to lay out the easement language to go to HRDC with, right?
That's right.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, good. Anything else? I did, by the way, also get a call from someone on the tree board because they do have funding for some trees for next spring, summer, and they were asking for ideas. So we just explored what's going on. Yeah, so if you have ideas, let the tree board know or let me know and I'll pass it along. But they were walking some of these areas to figure out where the trees should go. They are looking at possibly that HRDC property as well. But they also want to look at parks and trails that might need it. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, the HRDC where the houses are, if it's desperate for some landscaping and like they ran out of money and just on that triangle, sorry, with Reservoir Park, he was open to anything. He said play area, community garden, whatever you want to do.
Who said that?
Martin from HRDC,
Oh, HRDC.
because it's their property,
Mhm.
that little triangle with the goat. Yeah, and he doesn't think there's any problems with children running across, or he thought a playground would be fantastic.
I didn't realize that was private property.
I didn't either, but he seemed to think so, and Matthew didn't argue. So
That's news to me because in all the maps we've had from Public Works, it shows it as public and so does our trail map.
maybe it's Parkland. I don't know. Maybe it's owned by HRDC. I'm not sure.
Boy, I'd sure like to get that cleared up.
Yeah.
That's all I
Okay.
have.
Okay. Anybody else with updates or anything they want to mention? Okay, so our next step is I'll send out the doodle poll for a quick December meeting. And otherwise we'll just, our next regular meeting will be in January. So. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Allison, for running the Zoom.
Yeah, thanks you guys. Good to see you all.
Welcome. Thank you. Good night.
Joining us. We need someone to motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I
I'll make a
motion to
motion.
adjourn.
We all do.
And a second?
I second.
Okay, Clay. Okay, all those in favor?
I.
Aye.
Bye.
Moved at 7:17. Thanks, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Bye.